How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to hear for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We've got Bryan Alvarez of the Figure 4 Weekly, of course, here with us. Second hour, we're going to be talking with Vinnie Carroll and Ed Simkus, who wrote the book, WRESTLERADIO USA, Grappler Speak. It's actually a collection of interviews with some of the biggest names in the history of wrestling. We'll talk about it in the second hour, but it includes Ric Flair, Mick Foley, Triple H, Ricky Steamboat, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, and Lou Thez as some of the names, and Jim Ross is in there, Gordon Soley's in there as well. So a lot of interesting personalities, excerpts from their radio show interviews done in the 90s. And there's a lot of things that people said in the 90s that they probably wish they hadn't said today, some of which we'll probably talk about in the second hour. Of course, quite a bit since the last time we were here on the 4th. We, of course, had the Vengeance pay-per-view. Ric Flair's book, which had actually already been out when we were on the 4th, and Bryan, you know, now Bryan, have you read the book?
Believe it or not, I haven't yet.
You haven't read the book? Oh, really? Oh, well.
But I will.
Okay. Well, we haven't talked to you since the thing came out. And then, of course, Bret Hart's response this week, which turned into an avalanche of response on our website. Probably one of the most heated topics in months. And we were scheduled.
That one.
What?
I definitely read that one.
The Bret Hart response, yes. Yes. So, anyway, we are scheduled to have Bret Hart on. I don't know. I don't know because we haven't found him, but hopefully he will be on in the next hour. And we have a full bank of calls, so as soon as someone hangs up after we get to some calls, calls at 1-800-878-PLAY. Got a lot to talk about. I guess start with Vengeance. What are your thoughts?
Well, it was a two-match show, but everybody knew that going in, and I thought the two matches were pretty good, so I really had no complaints, and, you know, after the bash, there's nothing they could have done that I really probably could have complained about, so I was happy with it. I thought they did a lot with Edge, and I think that the title win, it did a lot for Edge as far as how the fans view him, and I think it did a lot for him as well, because unless it was like some total fluke, which it may have been because Batista was involved, he was like a totally different wrestler on Monday. And well,
hey, the one who was a totally different wrestler on Monday was Batista.
Yeah, they both were. So.
I mean, on Sunday he looked like he didn't even belong, you know, in the WWE. Yeah. And on Monday he looked like, you know, I mean, he looked like he belonged and then some. Brett, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good.
Well, no, you know, since the last time we've talked, what have you, aside from writing the book, and where basically are you up to on the book and release date, and you know, catch us up on that right now?
Well, I'm a ways still. I'm working on probably the hardest part to sort of I'm really working on the ending of the you know, so the last sort of if you could split it up like a football game, I'm into about the middle of the third quarter, so I'm just about done. It's still got to take a little while. I'm not looking to, you know, rush anything out or make any Christmas deadlines and stuff. But if I'm lucky, I could get it out. Maybe if things go well, I could try to get it out by Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Now, what have you been up to of late, and how's you know, rehab going, things like that? You know, where are you up to? I mean, have you had more improvement since the last time we've talked, or are you kind of plateauing?
Well, you know, you always it's sort of like peeling an onion. You know, you have a little bit all the time. I mean, stuff that you don't even recognize or notice yourself, but stuff you notice later. You notice that you're walking better, you're talking better. And I think for a lot of people that maybe saw me when I went down to Australia, as an example, around that period of time, which is over a year ago now, I've had a much better improvement. Sometimes it's not really visible, but my stamina and my strength and everything is coming back better. And I did attempt to I was trying to do a 300-pound bench press by my 2-year anniversary, but I couldn't do it. I got up to about 288.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you an idea, though. I mean, I couldn't lift my hand 2 years ago, and now I can bench press 288 pounds, which isn't, you know, it's not a huge amount, but I mean, it's
all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that. Like when I was in my wheelchair, I would never have thought that I could lift 200 pounds, let alone 288 pounds. And so I take all of it as a good sign. I'm just kind of, you know, I've kind of just making up for all that lost time, especially when I had the stroke, and just trying to be really, you know, to try to be a good dad and, you know, be a good person and not let all the little things get to me.
Now, what As far as any appearances or things like that, I mean, do you have anything? You went to Europe basically on a vacation recently, right?
Yeah, I went overseas over to Europe. I was supposed to do an appearance in Amsterdam that ended up getting canceled, but I still had the ticket. So I have a lot of friends and people that I know over there. So I like going over to Europe, and I like traveling around. Like I think every 6 months or so I like to go somewhere, whether it's Australia or Europe or somewhere where I don't know, it's kind of fun to get back on the road, but not necessarily have to be around wrestlers in the wrestling world.
Now, of course, this week was kind of a controversial thing. You know, how did everything? You know, you were over in Europe when Ric Flair's book first came out, and you know, what were you know? I mean, have you only read the stuff pertaining to you, or you know?
I only read the stuff pertaining to me, and then I said, let me know what. I also heard that he had sort of spoke maybe unkindly or unfairly about Mick Foley and Randy, and I asked for those pages to be sent to me too. But no, I didn't read it. I really wouldn't have much interest reading Ric Flair's story. But you know, and I always thought, you know, when someone told, when I heard that Ric Flair had really unflattering things to say about me, I was really surprised but I'm starting to get that from Mick and a lot of guys, that he's somebody that kind of, you know, plays one face when he sees you, and he plays another face when he's a million miles away, you know. And
have you?
I was really disappointed in what he said.
But as far as you know, influence from whether it's Hunter or Shawn Michaels, you know, on this.
You know what? I don't know. You know, certainly wouldn't surprise me. Let me put it that way. I did sense, and I've sort of been forewarned after that the whole there's a attempt to somehow make an angle out of all this kind of stuff, and that it's not a.
Well, certainly with Mick Foley, I mean that's you know, everyone knows that. You know.
Yeah, I think.
And with you, if they could get you on TV and make an angle of it, I'm sure Vince would love it. You know.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like whatever it takes. You know.
Yeah.
I've always had a bit of a problem with somebody taking real things and working an angle out of it, especially when, you know, the innocent party maybe doesn't even know that it's an angle. You know. And it sets a bad precedent, I think, in wrestling if you start. You know, saying something about somebody's family or him that are maybe not really very fair. One, you know, you say after, like, oh, I was just kidding, I was just trying to work an angle so we could draw some money. I think that sets a bad example for how to do business.
What's your thoughts as far as you know, doing something with WWE? I mean, you know, everyone knows that there's, you know, the DVD idea. Obviously, they had great success with the DVD and a lot of the historical DVDs. The Shawn Michaels one was a success, and the Monday Night Wars one was a success. They're doing an ECW one. So the idea of DVDs based on, you know, showing a lot of the stuff from the past. You know, obviously it's worked before, and you know, you were talking about doing the thing, you know, before there even were DVDs. You know, back in '97, before you left the company.
Yeah, you know, in saying that, I believe I'm going to have a conversation with Shane McMahon tomorrow, and I hope we can have a good conversation about it. And I think I certainly wouldn't want to jeopardize that by saying anything on you know, this interview, that because they can be kind of touchy too, you know, where they.
Yeah.
But I would hope that we can do something. The big question mark is, like, everyone's sort of all the extensions have been sort of put out, and everyone's hoping that something can be done. But it just remains a bit of a question mark for me, is what do we do when we get to the Survivor Series in '97? You know, like, you know, whose version are we going to do? The real one, or the one that's, you know, the one that paints everyone out to be, that paints me out to be the, you know, it was just business. You know, I don't know. I have a hard time. I mean, I've kind of got past all of it, and it's not something I carry around anymore, for sure. But at the same time, I know what happened that day, and I know that I was, you know, put with my back against the wall, and I have never had any regrets about how I myself or what I did during that strange day. And I've always found that they minimize it, or, you know, it's okay to poke fun about it, and like whenever they come up here, they have Earl Hebner screw the baby face, and the fans are all chanting my name. But I don't really. To me, it was never an angle, and it never will be. And if we can do a DVD that somehow satisfies the truth more than anything, I would look forward to doing that. But at the same time, I'm pretty firm about how I want to be remembered, and I don't want to be remembered ever in any way, shape, or form as somebody that had to sell out and kind of come back just to get his DVD out so people would remember him. I think hopefully my fans that I have out there will always remember me for the way I was, and hopefully we can do a DVD just because I think it'd be fun to do, and I think it'd be important for the for the industry maybe. I think a lot of how I wrestled and the way I wrestled is not necessarily understood by people. Like I think when you watch really good wrestlers work, it's hard to tell what's good about their work and what's not good about their work, because sometimes it can be so tight and so realistic. Like I think sometimes if you watch Bret Hart wrestle, you may have thought he was just as stiff and realistic as Vader, but I mean I can tell you that there's a big difference between wrestling Bret Hart and wrestling Vader.
Yeah, that's for sure. If there is a DVD and it's been talked about, put out on the career of Bret Hart, what matches would you choose? What comes to mind, Bret?
I got so many. I mean, I really do have a lot of that. I would feel bad if they weren't in there. I always loved the match I had with Benoit in Kansas City, just for what it meant to me to have that match. And I also loved, I really loved my matches with the Bulldog and Wembley, and I really did think the match I had, the hour match I had with Shawn, the Iron Man match, was it was probably the best match wrestling that I've ever seen. Like I think it was, when I watch wrestling, I don't think anyone's duplicated that one yet, or worked as hard or put as much into it. And it's, when I think of that match and I think of what, could have come from other matches after that, it's a shame that we didn't have so many more dances after that, me and Shawn. But that hour match was a terrific match. And I always loved the match I had with Stone, because it was such a, I always thought it was a good match to put on for people that wanted to believe wrestling again. Like whenever I put wrestling on with somebody that's not really a fan, every once in a while I'll put that one on, because it just seems so intense and so. And Steve was just a beautiful guy to work with all the time. He's one of those guys like Kurt Hennig that I had just a great chemistry with, and sort of a good respect between us. And let's see, I always loved. I loved the match I had with Kevin Nash when I won the title. I think it was the third time. In Washington was another really good match that some people forget about. But I mean, if you watch it for how a big, huge 7-foot guy would wrestle a guy my size, it was pretty intense, and I think it came across as pretty realistic. And I know that Kevin Nash always thought that was his best match, and he used to always talk about it. And I always enjoyed it. I think I liked the idea that when I went crashing through the table at that time, nobody went through tables, and it was I can remember Sabu used to go through the tables all the time. I thought, there's no build-up, there's no suspense. It just happens. Like everyone knows he's going to miss. That guy's going to move, and he's going to go through the table. And I thought, it's too bad they couldn't do something where you went through the table and nobody saw it coming. And I remember when I ran it by Vince, I said that'd be a good way to win the belt. And I remember he called me back a few days later, and that was how we were doing it, But I had some of the matches that really stood out for me aren't necessarily like I love the match I had. All my matches I had as an example, just because he was almost like a dream guy to work with. Like he was perfect. He was perfect, and he was one of the safest, easiest, tightest, best athletes that I ever worked with. It was like he came to play every night, and it was always fun to work with him. And I don't know that he ever had the same chemistry with anyone else, and I don't know that I did either. I had a lot of really great matches with Dynamite Kid when I worked for my dad. I don't know if those would be on there, but it would be a shame if they weren't, some of them, or some of the highlights from them. And let's see. some of the matches that really, I never got any credit for, there probably were, 1.5 stars in the Observer there, but some of the matches I had with people like Kikuchi and.
Well, there was one you had one TV match with him that was really great. I remember that.
Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, on a Raw, yeah.
Then Isaac Yankem, I think I wrestled him when he I wouldn't even barely have called him a pro wrestler at the time. He was really green, and he was a great kid, and at that time he just wanted someone to help him get through the match, and even I think sometimes like people like the Patriot, when I look at the matches I had with them, they were really good when they weren't necessarily guys that were big box office or were highly touted workers or anything like that. It was like I kind of like taking guys that weren't necessarily really respected, and who I thought were better than they got the credit than they got. And like Akushi, I remember a lot of the guys would work with him and they wouldn't sell for him and they'd eat him up. And he was just a nice guy that was trying to make a living over here, and hard worker and a good athlete. I can remember saying I want to go in there and just have such a great match with him and show everybody that this guy was a real good worker and a good hand. And it was kind of a challenge to go out there every night with guys like him or Pierre Lafitte, and have great matches with those kind of guys. Then always going out there with the Shawn Michaels and the Mr. Perfects and stuff like that. Sometimes it's hard not to have a good match with those kind of guys, but to take somebody that's not very good and give them a really good match and make people. I think I was watching a few days ago. Not that it certainly wouldn't be on my, best of DVD, but I watched a match I had with the fake Razor Ramon.
Oh, that would have been Rick Bogner?
Yeah. I watched it and he was, with all due respect, he was a horrible wrestler. he really had no business even being in a wrestling ring. But if you watch the match back, if anyone watched it back, I made him look like an actual reasonably serious wrestler. And I think that was little things like that I think people don't realize sometimes.
Bryan, do you have any matches that would come to mind that he has to talk about?
What about interviews, Zach? If they did a series of interviews for there, were any favorite interviews that you had? Like I remember during the U.S.-Canada.
Oh, yeah, the 97.
Awesome.
Yeah, the 23-minute one.
The one that where you actually formed, you got Owen and Davey and you back together again?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one. That was really.
I love that one. I love the one I did in Edmonton about we don't shoot each other, kill each other on every street corner. That was a pretty intense interview, and I remember it stood out in a lot of people's minds, especially up here in Canada. But some of my interviews, Ric Flair said I had no charisma or no personality for my interviews, but in truth, I actually think I could do a good interview if I could somehow base it on in my head as being real. If I could convince myself that it could happen and this is kind of real. I had a hard time making anything of an interview when I had to talk about somebody stealing my jacket or some of the really hokey stuff they came up with, like my storylines were not the great, so maybe my interviews weren't some of those situations, but yeah, I think there was some really good interviews. I think even when I worked with Owen, we had some really good interviews that were really intense and realistic, and I think they touched a lot of people in the sense that it made people, reflect on their own situations in their own families. With maybe, I was surprised to find out through that whole brother feud with Owen that how many regular people out there in the world have falling outs with their siblings of some kind, and they identified with Owen and me, and it was I think our interviews, came across as really from the heart kind of thing, even though Owen and me were always very close, and we were never had hard feelings in any way for each other, never had an argument. And if you watch the interviews, they hate each other pretty good.
The one match, because I was thinking about it because I wrote about it a couple days ago, was a match that you had with Tom McGee in Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because a lot of guys, that I've seen carry guys, okay, I will watch the match and maybe a fan can't see it, and a lot of fans can see it, like, this guy's carrying this guy, the guy's not really that good. You took a guy who was worse than not really that good, and you made him look like he was going to be the next world champion, and a lot of people will say, oh yeah, you made him look like a world champion, and as a figure of speech, and this is not a figure of speech because when that match was over, I remember the word was Tom McGee, that's the next Hulk Hogan. And and Tom McGee never had anything resembling another good wrestling match the rest of his life. He was terrible. I saw him at many house shows, and I couldn't. And before I had ever seen the tape of your match with him, and it was like, I had heard about this match, and after a while, not seeing the match and having seen Tom McGee for a couple of years, I quite frankly didn't believe that it was possible that the match had taken on a life of its own until I actually saw the match, and it wasn't one of these things like, I'll use Ric Flair. It's not like a Ric Flair Nikita Koloff thing where you watch it and you go, Ric Flair's bumping for this guy and making the guy look good. This was, watching that match, you don't even know that it's Bret Hart carrying the guy. You actually think that you think the guy himself actually is great, and that was one of the best carry jobs I think I've ever seen in my life. Maybe the best.
Yeah, you may be right about that. I used to shake my head and wonder after watching him. He was one of the worst wrestlers. I should never have got in the business. Funny thing was, he was such a great athlete. He could do a standing backflip and land right on his feet and stuff, and do cartwheels, triple cartwheels off the top and all that kind of stuff. But he just never had a clue. I remember he's horrible, but yeah, that was. I remember that too. I remember that was the same night Owen started. Actually, I got Owen a tryout, and oddly enough, Tom McGee got a tryout, and they both came down, and Owen had a bad match when he was so much better than Tom. Because Owen was thrown in there with somebody that had no experience, like one of those TV job guys, which is like, when I first went to WWF, I didn't know how to have a TV job guy match either. It's like totally foreign to me because my dad's wrestling in Stampede. There's no such thing as a 4-minute squash match. It just never happened. Everybody had, every match was 15 minutes long, and there was a story and a building and a middle and an end and all that kind of stuff. But when I worked with McGee, I just remember telling him, I said, give me your 3 best moves and don't say a word. Tell me what they are. And I remember taking them and sort of figuring out where I would put them. Luckily I can say one thing about Tom is that he listened to everything I said, and when he came back, you're absolutely right about it. Vince said, that's my next champion.
Yeah. Well, he was, I used to joke about that because it was like, yeah, and he was right, it was just the wrong guy. You wrote the thing about Ric Flair earlier this week, and do you think you were a little hard on his wrestling? Or
I think I was really precise.
Okay.
A lot of people think that Flair was he was a really good mechanic in the ring. There's nothing wrong with Rick. Worked the leg, he could work the leg. He worked it beautifully all the time. But his psychology, he never had an ounce of psychology, Ric Flair. I never saw any psychology in any of my matches that I ever had with him or anyone else's matches with him. He was a guy that really was a 3 dressed up as a 9. I think I was hit this nail right on the head, and the only way you can know that is to have worked with him or to have the only way is really is to have worked with him and or been in the business. And I think most of the people that I respected in the business never had a lot of respect for Ric Flair as a real worker, as a great worker. He was a guy that could do all the mechanical wrestling, but he never had a clue what he was doing from the time the bell rang to the time the bell ended or rang to end the match.
Because I've got to say, when most of the wrestlers that I've talked to, of the current wrestlers, the 3 names they bring up as who they think the best are you, Shawn Michaels, and Ric Flair. Some of the older wrestlers, you'll hear Terry Funk, Steamboat, and further back, there'll be other guys. But with the current wrestlers, he's always, his name's always mentioned in that top group.
Well, I think that's because there's a lot of fans that think he was a great wrestler. But he couldn't put his shoelace through the eye of his boots, or Kurt Hennings, or Kurt was such a great guy to work with. There's so much that goes into a wrestling match that maybe some people don't necessarily understand. Little wrestling's a little bit sometimes like figure skating, in the sense that if at the end of the match you wish the fans could hold up numbers and go 8, 9, 10, or whatever, And Rick was a really tricky guy to work with, in the sense that, if he felt threatened or, he was very protective of his reputation, if that's what it was. But I can remember often going in with Rick and wrestling with him, and being completely baffled at how he could like screw everything up all the time and lose the momentum of the match and blow all the heat. Just when you had all the place was ready to come unglued, he'd call for a reverse backdrop and, you know, like he'd lose everything and start all over again. And I went through that so much. When I wrote about him, when I wrote about myself being really exasperated, I mean, I really did have a conversation with Vince McMahon for several weeks where I was telling him that I swear he's trying to kill me off like every night. I know in Ottawa, I think I wrote that it was, you know, that Razor Ramon was in the dressing room in Boston when we had the hour-long match. I don't remember exactly where it was, and I maybe should have had my facts right when I said that. But the truth is, I was somewhere with Ric Flair. It might have been Ottawa. I know it was several times where I had problems with him where it was just, I came back like, what are you doing? Like, how could you blow it so bad and so off the mark? Like I had a match with him in Ottawa a few days after winning the belt, and the place was just going crazy. And I remember he had me in a figure four, and he called for a small package, and I small packaged him, and he pinned himself. I made no comeback or anything. And I remember I came back, and I think that's where I dressed him down and said, I make comebacks. I make my comeback. I got a whole comeback I do, and if you can't do it, I'll do it on my own. And I remember I really chewed him out in the dressing room. And it got to be like, I started to really see such big holes in this guy's, sort of his reputation was just, you know, for lack of a better word, was just bullshit. You know, he was just not that good of a wrestler. Either that or he was doing all this kind of stuff on purpose, which makes him not a good wrestler either. I think, I always took pride in going in there with a Hakushi or someone that wasn't very good and making him look like $1 million. To me, that was a credit or a tribute to somebody that I liked or I respected. And Flair often worked with guys, and I remember the Hawk is one, and I can remember Lex Luger is another that came back after. And then we talked about him years later, and they said that he, you know, intentionally made them sort of look inept all the time, and always sort of implied that it was their fault. And I always sensed the same thing, that if Rick could sort of intentionally, like he did with me that one time, intentionally screw up the whole finish and make it look like it was my fault and kind of pretend to everyone it was my fault, it was his way of protecting his place. And I never thought he was a straight shooter in the ring at all. I thought he was always an old fox that did stuff that made it look like, you know, and I think it was all intentional, or at least a lot of it was. And I remember I talked to Vince McMahon about it, and he came to the conclusion, and he said the opposite. He said that he thought Rick never did anything intentional, like that it wasn't screwing the matches up on purpose, that he just didn't know what he was doing, and he never did. And it was all sort of a myth about his sort of supposed greatness. But I do remember having some great matches with Rick, and, you know, I'll never take away from the fact that he worked really hard in the ring. He was one of the hardest workers in the ring. But I never thought he was a straight shooter, and I never thought he had an ounce of ring psychology.
I'm going to throw some names at you, and kind of like a Hall of Fame thing, and see what you think of them, since they're kind of on the ballot that's coming up. Arn Anderson.
I thought he was a great wrestler, really one of the best. One of the best to ever come out of Charlotte, anyway. And a great guy, and was always a straight shooter. And I think he was the kind of guy that often is overlooked for somebody that as somebody that made his opponents always look better than he did. You know, like he always protected everybody he worked with, and I bet he's one of those as impeccable safety record as I had. You know, he was always a total pro.
Kurt Angle.
I've never worked with him. Wished I had. If I could come back and have one more match, it would be with him. And funny enough, we've never met, but I got a great amount of respect for him, and I think I don't know anybody that got into wrestling that late in his career, you know, after the Olympics and everything, and came back and ended up doing such a great job and was such a credit to the industry. I think he was an exceptional wrestler that I really do wish I could have worked with him one time.
When's the last time you talked to him?
About 3 months ago, maybe.
Because I think for a long time, I don't think he understood that you had a stroke.
Yeah, he wanted to wrestle you in the worst way. He wanted to wrestle you at last year's WrestleMania.
Yeah, I know. We even talked about it after. I think you guys may have wrote about it or something, but he still, I think it was more wishful thinking. He wished we could have one match, and I told myself I wish we could too, but it's happened. You know, it wouldn't be, you know, if I had a gun to my head and I had to go out there and wrestle with him, it would be a shame because I don't think we could do what we could have done at one point in time.
Bob Backlund.
One of the real genuine nice business. One of the just the straightest, nicest, politest guy that you could ever want to meet. And I always enjoyed. There's a match that I always enjoy. I love the match I had with Bob Backlund in San Antonio as an example. I hated the one we had in Hartford. I hated it before we even had it. I said it's going to be a stink. It's going to stink.
The WrestleMania one. I remember that one. Yeah.
I hated it. It was like actually one of the only matches I think if you were going to put a best of it, would have to definitely, the worst of it would be on there. It was one of my worst pay-per-views I ever had. And I knew it was going to be. I said, you've only made it harder by making it a wrestling submission match, It really limits even less that we can do. And I told Vince before the match that, when I first heard the concept, it was going to be an I quit match. I said, it's going to stink. And it stunk. And it wasn't Bob's fault, and it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't Roddy's fault. It was just a crappy idea.
Eddie Guerrero.
Who?
Eddie Guerrero.
Eddie Guerrero?
Yeah.
I only knew Eddie a little bit in the WCW, but he was always very respectful and always very seemed to have a great respect for the old school and the way things were. And he was always a hard worker, and that's about all. And I think he was a good worker. And
you never really got a chance to work with him, or did you in WCW? I don't really remember. None of the matches.
I don't think I've ever worked with him. No, I might have worked with his brother in a match of some kind, but I don't remember even working with him. I didn't work with too many guys in that kind of in the lighter classes. The only one that comes to mind, I did work some kind of, I don't think it was stereo, but I may have worked with Juventud in Oakland or something one time.
Triple H.
Triple H, he was always a good worker. I always liked his kicks. I remember when he first came in, he was a guy that I think Killer Kowalski did put a lot of time into teaching him. But I don't know, I'm still never thought he was much of a team player, and I never really, I don't want to get all kinds of heat with the guy anymore, but he never seemed to be a guy that had much integrity to me.
Owen.
Brother Owen?
Yeah. As a wrestler.
As a wrestler, I thought Owen was a really, he was a great wrestler that did a lot of great high flying and stuff. But I think Owen, he could work really hard, and he like in the wrestling business, like he would turn it off and on at night. Like when it was done, it was done. He didn't think about it anymore till 10 minutes before he went back out to the ring. And that's a credit maybe in some ways to him, but I always thought Owen was a really safe worker and a hard worker, and he was somebody that it didn't matter if there were a couple hundred people there or a couple thousand. He always gave the same match and the same effort. I can remember him doing the drop kick off the top, and always, which is a hard bump when you have to land on your back. You can't really break your fall. It's a tough bump to take, and he would do it all the time. And he worked hard, and he was like old school, like a lot of the wrestlers that worked up here for my dad, like Benoit and stuff, that never saw it, never looked past the front row. They just went out there and had the same match.
Kurt Hennig.
Kurt, of all the guys I've talked about, he was such a beauty to work with. I mean, for me anyway. I think for chemistry, he was maybe the best for me. We had, in a lot of ways, we had sort of the same match for the first time we worked to the last time we worked kind of thing, but it always came across as different anyway, and he was always, I can remember Kurt, we'd end up doing shots of Jack Daniels all night and stuff, and I remember, we'd show up in the dressing room, we'd tell each other that we're going to cut out all the, take we condense it down and shorten it a little bit and not do all the hard bumps and stuff, and we'd take a night off kind of thing. But every time we went out there, it was more complicated to try to change it, so we just went back to the full speed hard match every night. And I can remember after the show, we'd always sit there drinking a beer again, and we'd go through the whole thing over and over. And he was somebody that could And once you had that kind of chemistry, you could wrestle Kurt Hennig. You could wrestle him for hours and hours and hours or years. I wish I could wrestle him. I could have wrestled him more, or done more creative angles with him than the one we did. It seemed like we worked forever. We really didn't get a chance to do an angle. As far as interviews go, when you were talking about interviews before, I always loved the interview I did with Kurt Hennig at the King of the Ring, when we talked about whose dad was tougher and all that.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a genuine interview, but it was two wrestlers working each other and kind of laughing and kidding each other, and it was really a very heartfelt interview. And I remember we both really had a great amount of respect for each other, and I think of all the wrestlers that have passed away, Kurt has always been one of the hardest ones for me to really take.
And Brett, we only got a couple minutes left. I wanted to ask you, one of the things that you mentioned in that thing that you wrote a couple days ago, that you actually never saw Ric Flair wrestle till 1989. Did you never saw him when you worked in? Because I know you worked in Toronto at the same time he was there. There were one or two shows.
I watched him work. Actually, I watched him wrestle in a dog collar match with Greg Valentine, but I didn't really see it. I just remember that they both came back, covered in blood, and I guess it was probably a good, decent enough match for that time and stuff. But I mean, I never had a chance to really watch him in a championship style match with a good worker like Steamboat or anything like that. I never saw any of his matches with Steamboat. But in those days, every now and then you catch him on TV, but it was usually I don't think I even saw Flair have squash matches, but sometimes you see him doing promos and stuff. But I never did get a chance to really watch him work until I was in the ring with him.
We're pretty much out of time. Anything that you're doing besides the book coming up?
Not really. I think I'm going to do a Christmas play in Toronto, but I'm not. It's still in the works.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get out and let people know that I'm doing better than I was, and I'm doing much better than they maybe saw me when I was in Australia, which was actually a big step for me to get down there and do that. And I think I've looked through my whole recovery with my stroke is to try to always push myself a little further and try to get back to where I was before I had the stroke. And I would say that I'm pretty much there now. So I'm back. You won't see me in a ring, but I'll try to live my life like I'm still alive from here on in.
Okay. Brett, I want to for doing the show, and we'll talk to you very soon.
All right, you take care.
Okay, you take care, too. We'll be joined in just a couple minutes by Ed Simkus and Vinnie Carolyn, whose book, WrestleRadio USA Speak, has just come out. It's got interviews with all kinds of wrestlers, legends from different eras, from the Killer Kowalski era, Triple H, as we mentioned, Ric Flair, Moolah, George the Animal Steele, Jim Duggan, Ricky Steamboat, Lou Thez, Gordon Solie, Jim Ross, and many others. And I
wonder if there's Hunter interviews from the war. He was burying Flair.
Oh, I'm going to read. Well, we'll wait till they're on, and I got some good Hunter quotes in there. No, he wasn't burying Flair. In fact, he said the interview with Hunter is actually from his rookie year, and when he's asked who his favorite wrestlers were growing up, he mentions Flair. So.
Oh, there you go.
So but he has some interesting quotes that we'll talk about. Before we get to them, just a few quick notes. Your prediction on tonight's fight with Takashi Sugiura and Giant Silva.
Giant Silva.
Think so.
I'm the biggest Giant Silva supporter fan in the world.
Yeah, but well, let's see. He's 1-2 right now, right?
Well, he's not really. I don't think he's going to really beat anybody, except Sugiura really isn't anybody right now, and Silva's been training, and and he's big.
Yeah. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the. I still haven't seen the tape of the Noah show from the Tokyo Dome. I heard it was out of this world, but so I can't wait to see that one.
But they did the exploder off the top of the floor, right?
Yeah, they did.
I can't even fathom such a thing.
I've seen the pictures.
Really?
Yeah.
So when I saw, in TNA, they did just a normal suplex off the top of the floor.
So they did the superplex spot. But
the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
But they had a whole crew of people catching them. This was not with anyone catching.
No, they did one where they just went to the floor.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
Oh, God, I couldn't even believe it.
Oh.
But it wasn't even off the very top. It was rope or something like that, but still to the floor.
Yeah.
So.
I saw pictures again. There was a cage match from about a week ago with Minoru Fujita and Tatsuhito Takaiwa. and they did splash off the cage like Eddie Guerrero did the other night, which I got to tell you something. I was so pissed watching that splash off the top ropes when Bradshaw kicked out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was like, why make that a transition move? I mean that they should have saved that splash for like some other, you know what I mean?
When it would matter.
Well, it was just such
they could make it matter.
It was like it was this fantastic move, and then when they kicked out, it's like, well, it wasn't even a pinfall.
Yep.
But anyway, they probably did the same thing in Japan. They did a powerbomb off the top of the cage, a superplex off the top of the cage, and a splash off the top of the cage, all in the same match. And obviously, probably at least two of those three, if not all three, weren't finishes. So, there you go. We're also going to be giving away one copy of the book, WrestleRadio USA. It will be to the first caller, and all our lines are lit up, but we will be getting the calls in just a second. The first caller who can name a gold medal winner in the Olympics who went into professional wrestling, except for Kurt Angle, because that one's too easy. But there's been plenty of others, and it's not the most difficult question, but there's a few. But anyway, the first one will get a free copy of the book, and also want to mention the next 2 weeks. We will be doing our Hall of Fame shows. We did one last year that was very well received, but we had to rush through to get through all the names, so we're going to do 2 weeks. It will be with Mike Tenay and Larry Matisic, Bryan, and I. We will hopefully, maybe we'll get some other people on as well. But going through all the candidates, the list is out. We're all going to be picking. And Bryan, how much thought have you done to this one so far?
Very little so far.
Okay, I actually spent a couple hours today on it. Well, you got to be done by Sunday. That's your deadline.
Some preparation last year too that I still have to talk about.
Yeah. Let's say, of course, we got Ed Simkus and Vinnie Carolyn. How are you guys doing today?
Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing.
You go first. Tell them how you are.
We're doing good.
No Bruce Mitchell this week, huh?
No Bruce Mitchell this week. No, Bryan's on.
Yeah. Hi, Bryan. How you doing?
I'm sorry.
Now, when did you guys, most of this, which is a collection of interviews with different wrestlers, most of the book the interviews were actually done at various times during the 90s. There's Chris Benoit in there, and a lot of the top names in wrestling actually are in here, saying some things that are quite interesting when you look back in the day. And none, well, I shouldn't say none, but the one that I've been alluding to, so I'll do it right now, is Triple H, from very early in his career, when he was asked, he had just signed with WCW, and WWF wanted him to do a dark match. And, you asked him to compare the two and why he didn't go to WWF. And he said, I had more interest in going to work for WCW. I think they're the future of the business. I think the day of the sideshow circus gimmicks are a thing of the past.
Right.
So that was quite an interesting quote there.
Yeah, I guess
because then he became a sideshow gimmick.
Not
that's
really.
the thing to say when you're working for that specific company, apparently.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think the most telling quote, quite frankly, is within the first chapter on page 10. Not only does Mero talk about his own steroid usage, but he actually, this is a quote, he says, I've got to commend Vince McMahon on his testing system, and I talked to Bill Shaw about this because we've got to have mandatory testing in WCW. Here's a guy who was working for the company, not the business, for that many years. For him to go on a public radio station and say that, I think it speaks volumes.
Well, the testing in WWF at that point in time was very much real.
Right. 96, they had Dr. Mauro Di Pasquale, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
People definitely were getting smaller, but for him to say, I talked to Bill Shaw, we need mandatory testing in WCW, for a guy who was actually a contracted wrestler to say that.
That's a gutsy thing because it certainly didn't, that was not what the average wrestler was thinking at that time. The wrestlers were thinking of, how to get away with it and it's an unnecessary evil and, or just, I knew there were some pro wrestlers that were in favor of testing that I spoke with in that period, but... I
assume the clean ones?
I would assume that, too. There were not too many of them, though.
Right.
And it didn't last, more than a couple of years. And WCW tested, but I don't know. That was the strangest stuff. I mean, I just remember, I heard about all these guys failing tests, years later, someone would bring it up.
Uh-huh.
Eric Bischoff when Vader went to WWF, and WWF was knocking WCW's steroid testing policy, and then Eric Bischoff would go, well, you took Vader and he failed our steroid test, and it's like, well, that's really nice because he sure was never suspended for it, was he?
Yeah, well, I mean, WWF played the same game with Razor Ramon when he went to WCW for the marijuana thing. I mean, it's a game that's played for a long time, but it's just kind of weird seeing a wrestler saying our group needs to start doing mandatory testing, because they got some of the tapes of these shows, and, for him to say, I actually sat with Bill Shaw and talked to him about this, it's just mind-boggling to me.
I think the weirdest thing about all that was that he was using and told us that he was.
Right.
Yeah.
He came clean. He said, I did steroids. I'll never do it again. Who knows if that's true, but...
Well, he looked, if you looked at him later in his career, he looked like he didn't do steroids. I mean, and you can't always tell, other than if you compare, what he looked like when he started and later. You know what I mean? Like on the same guy, I mean, he was a lot, less muscular and smaller at the end of his career than he was at the beginning of his career.
Dave, you said something at the very beginning of this. You were talking about the Triple H thing, saying how WCW was going to be the future of wrestling. Looking back, rereading the book myself recently, I was kind of shocked that pretty much every single person who worked for WCW in that time in our interviews told us that this was going to be the way of the future. And now I believe this book, The Death of WCW, is coming. Right, Bryan?
That's right.
Yeah, it's already written. Now, of all the interviews you guys did, who would you say is the best and who would you say is the worst?
As far as interviews?
Yeah.
Vinny, I'm going to let you go first, my friend.
I think even when reading the book, I think Steamboat and Fez will probably, although Jim Ross came on at a time when he left the WWF over a contract dispute or what have you, and, talking about Bell's palsy and the real stuff of living with Bell's palsy, having to take your eyes shut so you can sleep, and the migraine-like headaches, trying to get out of bed. It was very compelling. You knew the guy was hurting. In the cover page of The Observer, July 12th, you say something, Dave, that's quite compelling, and it holds true with Jim Ross's interview. You say, exactly where McMahon's head is always subject to conjecture, but getting wrestlers to have real emotion against each other while he plays puppet master wouldn't exactly be a first for a promoter. Well, lo and behold, Ross talks about Savage and Hogan from Radio WWF in 19...
Oh, I read in the book where you talked about that. And I mean, but go ahead with the story, yeah.
He says Vince McMahon was the catalyst. He wanted to be cutting edge. Jim Ross just got back from being married in Vegas. He came back. The show was already formatted. And he said, look, you're just going to follow Savage. Now, obviously, what Savage had to say, was coming from his gut, and it was real emotions, but Vince McMahon had this all planned out. And it's funny, here it is, a week ago, you're talking about the same very thing in The Observer, and I said, geez, that happened 12 years ago, what happened?
He's doing it right now with Ric Flair and Mick Foley.
Right.
One interesting thing, on that, there is a fascinating book if one or the two or both would actually cooperate on Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. Because that dynamic is really interesting, because there is some, I know on Vince's side, there's a lot of mixed emotion there.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, if there was not a Hulk Hogan, I mean, who's to say what would have happened?
Right.
But he doesn't like him. And I mean, I know his family hates him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got Hogan. I don't know where Hogan's headed. Hogan's business. Hogan will, he'll make a deal with the devil, no problem, if it'll benefit him. But, Hogan wants back in. You can certainly tell. He may never say it publicly, but he does. And
does he want back in with Vince, do you think?
Oh, yeah, he wanted to be in. It hurt his feelings he wasn't in last year's WrestleMania. And now I know he wants back in. I mean, he's, you can tell by his interviews and everything like that. I mean, he's doing the same game that he did when he wanted in the last time.
Oh, he walked out 3 times, in the past year and a half or whatever?
Yeah, whatever it was he came in 2002, so he would have left. The first time was August 2002, I'm thinking, right before the Australia trip, right on his birthday. Uh-huh. So since August 2002, so in about, he quit 3 times. One time he actually was scheduled to come back and just didn't come back. And then you had the 2 other times where he quit. So, that's 3 times real quick, and it'd be hard. It'd be hard to bring him back right now. But
it's funny when you talk about Hogan and what would have happened if he didn't go to Vince, because we asked Steamboat, who he was jealous of, and he talked about Hogan. He said, what would happen if they gave me the same amount of airtime and promotion as Hogan? What would have the course of the careers of the history of wrestling been back in the 80s? Obviously, Steamboat probably didn't have the charisma of a Hogan. But he seems to think, judging by this interview, he didn't get the same type of push.
Well, nobody did. Nobody got the chance Hogan got. Luger came close.
Yeah.
Luger got the chance, but even then, they didn't pull the trigger on the title. And Luger would have never been as big a star as Hogan anyway. Right. I don't know that anyone from that era would have been as big as Hogan when you really look back at the guys.
Right.
But you never know. I mean, who's to say, and You don't know.
It was huge. I don't think there's going to be another one like him.
At that point in time, I mean, there was nobody else. Dusty was past his prime. Billy Graham was way past his prime. It couldn't have been him. So, I mean, at the time, I mean, you really had, if you would look at, like, 1983, 1984, you had Jason, much of a head case and would have self-destructed, and had already self-destructed.
Yeah.
You had Flair, who I don't think could have been as big as Hogan, although he could have been pretty big because he was a great talker. You had Kerry Von Erich, who also would have self-destructed, and you had Hogan. I think those were, like, the ones that, those were at that point in time, those were the guys.
Right. It seems to me that we had Vince with a plan getting ready to go into action, and Hogan was the plan.
Absolutely. Yeah, the plan was Superstar Billy Graham, but he was too old, so we had to do the new Superstar Billy Graham, and that was Hogan. Okay, worst interview you guys did?
Well, the worst ones we did never made it into the book, and I'll tell you who they were. Pee Wee Anderson was the single worst one. Okay. Chief J. Strongbow just played the role. He would not play ball with us. And,
why was Pee Wee so bad?
Our favorite, Colonel Rob Parker. Just dreadful. So they didn't make it in. We did over 100 interviews during the length of our show, and we think we have the cream of the crop in the book right now.
Brian, what was the worst interview we've had?
That we've ever had?
Yeah.
You think Kenny Bolin?
Kenny Bolin was the one that popped into my head, yeah. I don't think that was really the worst, but it was,
Isn't he a buddy of Jim Cornette? You would think he'd be pretty good.
Oh, yeah, but he came in...
That was strangely entertaining, though.
Yeah, he was way out there. That show was a disaster. But, yeah, that was one of the worst. Anyway, all our lines...
Why was Pee Wee Anderson so bad?
Yeah, I think it was the first interview we ever did. That's what it felt like. He just didn't know what to say to us.
He also didn't break kayfabe, if you want to say that, and just was very... It didn't seem like he wanted to be there. I think Alan Sharp told him that he didn't want to be there, but it just came across real bad.
Very stiff.
Yep. Okay, we're going to start with Chris in Vancouver. Chris, what's going on?
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Going really good.
First off, Bret Hart, I think that he was by far the better wrestler in the 90s. He had better matches than Flair. While Flair was in WCW having two-star matches with Hulk Hogan, Bret was having great matches with Owen Hart at SummerSlam, especially that steel cage match.
Ric Flair had some matches with Hulk Hogan that were a lot better than star matches, believe me. But I won't argue that Bret Hart from 93 to 97 was better than Ric Flair. But I mean, I would say that. Certainly on big shows, I would say that without question from 93 to 97.
Right. And before I let you go, I have a question about Ted DiBiase.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching my dad's old videos, and I came across, I guess, the main event taping back in February 5th, 1988 in Indianapolis when DiBiase was awarded the WWF title.
Oh, when he bought the belt?
When he bought the belt, yeah, Andre handed it over to him. And
yes.
then in the same video, like it's a full DiBiase compilation, I think my dad has, and it has DiBiase announced as the WWF champion in a house show that was televised on New England Sports Network in a tag match against Bam Bam Bigelow and Hulk Hogan, and his partner was Andre the Giant. My question is, he isn't officially recognized as a WWE champion, but do you guys feel he should be? Because, I mean, Triple H was given the world title, Mark Henry was given the European title, Ric Flair was given a world title by Kevin Nash. What do you guys feel about that?
I would say no, because they never... I mean, like, I know that it was recognized for like a week or so at house shows, but on television it never was recognized. I don't, I mean, trying to make, like, legitimate history out of those championships when the people who write the stories of those championships don't even know what they're doing, it's pretty tough. What can I say? But, no, I don't consider him... And he doesn't consider himself one. You ask him, I mean, it's one of his frustrations of his career was that he never won, in his mind, the world championship. So I guess he doesn't consider it, so I don't consider it. It's not listed in their record book, so I'd say no.
Whatever. And is Iron Sheik a gold medalist by any chance?
No.
No, okay, thanks.
Okay, that's right. That is our question. Name a gold medalist in the Olympics besides Kurt Angle, and you can get a free copy of the WrestleRadio USA book that we're talking about. We're going to go, we got one line open at 1-800-878-PLAY, so you can jump forward. Go to Ed in San Antonio. Ed, what's going on?
Hey, guys, to try and answer the question, didn't Andre Karelin work a match in Japan?
Well, now, you're right. It's not Andre Karelin, but it's Alexander Karelin, and that's close enough, so you win.
All right. I wasn't sure about that. My question that I have for you guys is, what would be the time period where wrestlers started to break kayfabe, and who were the first wrestlers to do that?
Well, you got to think of McMahon at 89 when he went.
Oh, I mean, there were wrestlers doing this in the in the 1910s, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm talking on a national with a big, huge name. That was one of the first.
When did it become okay for wrestlers to break kayfabe?
It's really hard to say. It's gradually happened.
I think it was like in the mid-90s when they started doing all those AOL chats.
Yeah.
I think that's when guys started to...
Well, the older guys, some of them still won't do it.
Yeah.
Although most will now.
I bet Jay Strongbow still won't.
In reading Flair's book, he even said, he hates it when he goes to arenas early and, employees in the arena are sitting down watching them rehearse matches.
Well, I can understand that.
Yeah, he's still trying to keep some of the mystique, and some of these wrestlers don't want to let go.
Yeah.
I went to a match a couple years back at the Fleet Center in Boston, and I was there covering it for my newspaper, so I was there early watching the quote-unquote rehearsal. Triple H was in the ring talking to a bunch of the guys, telling stories about moves he learned in the past, and I remember him, I was standing right next to the ring, I remember vividly saying, here's one that Harley used to do, and I was standing there with my notebook and scribbling down whatever he was saying. Shane McMahon was walking around, and he looked at me, saw me scribbling, he said, who are you, and what are you writing? He made me leave the area while I'm hearing the boys talking.
Yeah.
Got me.
So.
That was just 2 years ago.
Yeah. You got to figure the mood they're in at that moment.
Yep. I left. He's bigger than me.
Yeah. Anything else, Ed?
Well, no, I have to run into work in a couple minutes here, so I guess I'll let you guys go.
Okay, stay on the line, though, because we got to get your address so we can send you a copy of the book.
Okay.
Okay.
The book, Ed.
Okay. We're going to go to Alan in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Alan, what's going on?
Hey, Dave, not much. I wanted to talk about Ric Flair's book and his comments about Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now what is the relationship like at this point, do you know?
With Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan?
Yeah.
Well, if they have to work together, they'll work together. They're Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. If they don't have to work together, I'm sure that if you got Hulk Hogan right now, he'd probably have some really nasty things to say about Ric Flair. Right now, a year from now, could be totally different. And Flair, Flair has a hard time saying bad stuff about people, which was why a lot of the stuff in the book, but I think that he felt he wanted to write an interesting book and actually give his real thoughts on a lot of people, and one of them was Hogan. And but I mean, he's he'll work with them.
Right, but there's been a love-hate relationship over the years, would you say?
I wouldn't even go that far. I think that deep down with both of them, there's not a question in my mind that deep down with both of them, they resent the idea that some people think the other one is better. I think in Hogan's mind, he drew more money, which he absolutely did. In Flair's mind, he's not in his league as a wrestler. And some people think of Hogan as the greatest wrestler of the era. And, so I think that there's that. On a personal level, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Hogan would say good or bad about Flair. I mean, Hogan said some stuff to Flair as far as, like there was the match he was supposed to drop the title to where he wouldn't do it. And, the WWF feud could have been stronger. There's a lot of things.
You try to get rid of Arn Anderson, that's in Flair's book?
Yeah.
That's got to be personal because how close they were.
Yeah, and Hogan wanted to bring... But you know what? I mean, whenever you have a booking change or a power change, the guy in power brings in his friends, and the guy who loses power, they get rid of all of his friends. It's always been like that in wrestling. And I'm not saying... That doesn't make it right. I'm just saying that's how... I mean, look at, like, when Hogan came in, I mean, you had Jim Duggan beat Steve Austin in 27 seconds, and that's... That's kind of what they did. They fired Ricky Steamboat, although his career was pretty much over anyway. But a changing of the guard, the friends of the new guy in power, they're going to get the new jobs. I mean, look at Ed Leslie. I mean, Ed Leslie and Hulk Hogan wrestled main event at Starrcade.
Right.
I mean, think of that.
Right. And about the book that's coming out, is it going to be in bookstores or what?
Yeah, it should be. Right, Ed?
Oh, yeah, it is in bookstores as of this past Monday, and we were told that if stores have it in, any one of them will order it for you.
Which ones? Anyone?
Any of the major bookstores. I don't know what you're calling, what stores you have there, but I mean... Barnes & Noble, Borders, any of the major chains can get it for you. And most of them told us that they will be carrying it, but who knows.
One other question, real quick. Bruno Sammartino break kayfabe on his relationships with Larry Zbyszko or anybody?
In your book? Did you?
I missed the question.
I did too.
Bruno Sammartino break kayfabe as far as a relationship with Larry Zbyszko.
Yeah, the fun thing about that, he actually thought Zbyszko was a better wrestler than Flair and Backlund. He went to, Allen, I can't pronounce the name.
Allegheny.
Right. At high school, apparently he was a pretty good wrestler, legitimately. And
he was a good high school wrestler.
And even though they had their problems, Bruno put Zbyszko's wrestling ability over more than Backlund and Flair.
Bruno was never high on Bob Backlund. I mean, he was up and down on Flair. I mean, Flair was a hard worker, but also the pattern thing. And I'm sure this week. Well, I'm not sure. I already know. You asked Bruno this week about Flair. He didn't have anything nice to say.
Oh, sure.
That's the nature of this week.
But he does break kayfabe. He talks about the story with the Muhammad Ali closed circuit match where McMahon was trying to get him out of bed because he was injured, and he didn't want to go, and Vince was telling him, "Look, we're going to be shut down if you don't show up."
Yeah.
So he felt.
Yeah, those McMahons, Brian. They always know what to say.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they always get
manipulator.
Yeah, well, that's part of being a promoter.
Thanks.
What do you think of the Scorpio quote where he said Ric Flair set him up to get fired in WCW?
Well, that's what he said.
I mean, do you think there's anything to that? He went to St. Martin, they came back, he's the only guy that took a test. You'd be privy to that, I wouldn't.
As far as, I don't think Ric Flair had anything to do with the test.
Okay.
And, I think that there's something like, he failed the test. And it wasn't like he failed it once. I think he failed, was it 2 or 3 times?
And that was a marijuana test.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he did fail it a couple times.
Yeah, well, they don't fire you on the first failure, especially marijuana. So, I don't know who wanted him in, who didn't want him in, how the tests are used, but, I don't know,
So many of those guys were and probably still are using it just to get to sleep on the road every once in a while. I mean, a lot of those guys were very, very open with us about something like smoking pot. David, there's something I wanted to say to clear up the people who haven't seen this book yet. That one of the reasons I think it works so well is just before we did pretty much every interview, we got these folks, whether they were wrestlers or managers or announcers, we got them off the air and asked them as nicely as we could you guys please speak just as normal people, completely out of character? And almost every one of them said, yeah, sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a new thing for us. So they caught us a little bit off guard with their honesty when they were doing it, as we caught them, I think. That's how it works.
Yeah. It's certainly a lot different than it would have been if you had done the same book in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been, that would have been difficult. Let's go to Jonathan in Savannah. Jonathan, what's going on?
What's going on, Dave?
Not too much.
I got a couple questions to go through real quick. Who is seemingly, I'm assuming that Angle's no longer going to be the general manager on SmackDown.
Yeah, I would assume that, too.
And I didn't know if you knew or if it's too early to tell. With them, who is possibly going to be the new one, and the only, assuming that, unfortunately, it might be who I think everyone does not want it to be.
Stephanie McMahon?
That would be correct.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's been absent off of TV for...
She's been gone for a long time, yeah. And, I mean, she was originally supposed to come back a long time ago, and it just...
She can make her triumphant return.
Yeah, it didn't happen, so,
No, Shane just came back, too, sort of.
Yeah, and he was in the Japan show. Yeah, I don't know. If Stephanie wants to do it, obviously, if she wants to be in front of the camera, she's writing the show, so she'll be... obviously, they have made an effort to keep the McMahons off of television for a while now.
Yeah.
So, which may make even more, higher chance that it'll be her. I don't know though.
Okay.
I would think in the next 2 weeks probably 2 weeks from now we'll probably get the name.
Okay. My other question though was about Cena, and I guess it's probably not me. It's probably, I'm sure everybody else kind of notices it, but it seems to me like he's kind of, I don't know if like stuttering, not like sputtering is the right word or not. Kind of like he's like
stagnant is better than sputtering. I don't think he's doing badly, but it's
like, is there a reason behind that? Because doesn't he write his own material? I guess like the raps he writes. Is there a reason behind whoever's writing SmackDown? I don't know who it is.
Well, but the thing is he's been in main events. He main evented a pay-per-view with or was in the title match of a pay-per-view with Lesnar, a long time back, and he's not in a world title situation now. So therefore, once you've been there, it's kind of hard to go up. When he's been in that thing, and they've got the thing that's with Guerrero, Bradshaw, Undertaker, those are the guy in that mix, so he's going to be in the next mix down. So at that level with, working with Booker T and all that, you're pretty much going to be stagnant. I mean, it's hard once you've reached a certain level not to be stagnant unless, you're the guy that they're going all the way with. And he's not that guy right now. Right now, that guy is John Layfield. Well, what the heck.
And, my last question is about the Angle Eddie feud they're gonna do. I liked it before when they were feuding when Eddie had the title. But how do you see it working? Like, I guess, is it going to mean as much without Eddie having the title? And how is it going to work with Kurt having to do the new style, whatever his quote unquote new style is going to have to be? I guess.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions in this. It's Eddie Guerrero and Kurt Angle. How bad?
No, it can't be bad. But I'm just wondering how Kurt is going to have to. How before they'd be like, tell him to take it easy, and he'd like,
I wonder once he gets in there about taking it easy. I mean, like, I'm sure that he will say to everyone, and he will, in his mind, go, I got to take it easy, I got to take it easy. But when it's a SummerSlam pay-per-view,
he's going to go hardcore.
I mean, I've never seen him take it easy, so we'll have to see.
What was he doing in Japan? I don't really hear much about that.
But it's Japan and it's a house show. I mean, but he did. I mean, he did very well, but he didn't take any unnecessary risks.
Okay.
But he wouldn't on a house show. This is not SummerSlam.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what kind of shape he's in, but by the, if he's starting to work now, 5 weeks from now he'll be in, or 4 weeks from now he'll be in great shape.
And I got one last quick one about the Ring of Honor show, like last night, and a question about like another question with that. But I know there was like a quote when I was reading the report that was low key about him saying something about
the Rob Feinstein quote.
Yeah. What about that? Well, that wasn't a scripted like.
No, my impression, I don't know 100%. My impression is that he just said it because he's low key.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing with that, does TNA plan on bringing anybody else from Ring of Honor besides like the normal guys?
I haven't heard that. I think that right now TNA has brought in so many new guys that they need to get the guys they have over, unless it's, something, they have an idea for someone, like they did with Samoa Joe, but it didn't happen yet. But, I wouldn't rush to bring in a whole bunch of new guys right now. They need to establish some guys right now first before they start thinking about new guys.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay. What do you guys think of TNA?
I think the presentation's tremendous. They need a better time slot, obviously, and some of the names are a little bit hokey for me. Alpha Male and D.G. James, and every time I hear the name Dallas, I think of a female ballet, quite frankly. But I think the presentation's tremendous. AJ Styles and Chris Sabin, some of these guys, Amazing Red. They need to focus on angles. Jeff Jarrett can't be the center of attention. I understand why he is, but they're almost there. They need a better time slot. I'm worried if they burn out Orlando setting, but they have tremendous potential if they get a better time slot. They're doing tremendous. They are, and that's the slot as it is. But they have potential to go far. There's potential there. They have a lot to do, but there's certainly and having Mike today doing announcing can hurt.
Okay, you guys are from the Boston area, right?
Yes.
Going to matches in Boston for how long?
I haven't been recently, but I had been going since, 84, 85?
About 1969 was probably when I started going.
Okay, best Boston Garden match, or Fleet Center match, if that's applicable, you guys.
Flair and Hart is up there, and obviously I wouldn't know the politics behind it, but I recall...
You know what's so funny about that is I hear people ripping it, and I went back to my archives, and how people were viewing it at the time, and it was a 1.5-star house show match, and those things don't happen very often. And it's just like, wow, how bad could it have been? Well, how bad was that? How bad could that match have been?
That match was terrific.
I didn't think it was, I thought for a house show back then, a house show main event, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, there were some matches with the Rockers against the Brainbusters in '89 that were tremendous. And Kurt Hennig had some good matches as well, but I didn't... And remembering it, and of course that was years ago, but I thought it was very good for what it was. I mean, they went an hour, they had to pace themselves and use psychology for that 60 minutes, but I recall it being pretty good.
It was pretty good because they saved a lot of their energy, like they were supposed to, for the last 10 minutes, and that's when it got really nuts. Mm-hmm. But I have to blow the mood completely. My favorite all-time match at the Boston Garden, please forgive me, everyone, Bryan Blair against Adrian Adonis. I don't know why, it's sticking in my mind. It was one of the funniest and best played-out matches I ever saw.
Okay. Well, I didn't see the match, so I don't know. I just remember Bryan Blair had a tremendous match with Paul Orndorff once at St. Louis, and I could have the city wrong, but I think it was a St. Louis T taping. Just at the time, I mean, I don't know how great it would look today, but at the time it was like, you didn't get TV matches that good. We're going to go to Noel in Jacksonville. Noel, what's going on?
Yeah, I was just wondering something, just because, try to get to the truth of the matter for everything. What's the heat between Dynamite Kid and Bret Hart?
As far as...
His autobiography came out, Bret Hart made a comment, which according to Slam Wrestling, he made a comment like a Canadian-based internet wrestling company. He said something like, Dynamite Kid's got a broken legs, a broken back, and a broken brain. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. Something to that extent.
Yeah, he remembered something different than Dynamite did, and, I think that's what it is. As far as a wrestler, I mean, Bret has said before that he thinks the Dynamite Kid was the best guy he's ever worked. He certainly was praising Kurt Hennig tonight. But, as a wrestler, Bret Hart, obviously thinks Dynamite Kid's one of the best. Most people who wrestled him thought that.
Yeah.
So, you know. But yeah, I think that there were probably descriptions of Brett in the book, and if you read the book, you'll see it. You know, I can see where he would be getting upset. You know, Dynamite kind of felt that Brett was piggybacking off of his success in Japan, get into Japan, I think, and that's probably unfair because, you know, Dynamite Kid was a much bigger star at that point in time than Bret Hart in Japan, but Bret Hart was a star in Japan as well. Not a superstar, but a star.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he certainly earned his way there and earned his return trips. And after Dynamite had jumped, until Bret Hart was full-time in WWF, New Japan was bringing Bret Hart back as a regular. So, you know, to say that, Bret was piggybacking off of Dynamite's success in Japan, I don't know if that's really true.
What about Davey Boy, Dynamite?
Well, I mean, Dynamite wanted to keep Davey Boy out of Japan. Davey went on his own, got over like crazy. They ended up making him a tag team in Japan, and they did very, very well there, and prolonged Dynamite's career. Dynamite, physically wasn't in good shape, but, they hate each other, or, Davey's dead, but Dynamite absolutely hated him. They had a big, big falling out over, I think over the last time maybe Davey went back to WWE, perhaps. Not really, and left Japan, maybe.
So you think his book could have been a lot of half-truth?
I think that it was pretty honest for where Dynamite was. Everyone's got a different version of stories. I thought Dynamite went out of his way to be as honest as he could. If you read the book, he was more honest about a lot of things than, he tried to portray Japanese wrestling as real, which it wasn't. But that was his mentality because he felt that they hadn't exposed their business, so I'm not going to do it for him because suspected what they did.
Playboy.com has the women at Home Depot taking off everything, including.
Well,
that was interesting.
But that was something completely different.
Yeah. So, but anyway, with so I don't know where were we? But I think that with Dynamite and everything like that, I think that Dynamite was trying to be honest in that book more than most wrestlers in books. Okay.
Going to appear in August. I believe it's going to be August 8th at Kent, England, for a British Annual Wrestlers Reunion.
Good for him.
And he's going to be given a Lifetime Achievement Award. And I think, it's going to be a real good thing. I know a person is supposed to give him a ride there. I believe his name was Irish Pat Roach. Pat
Roach just died.
Yeah, he just passed away.
Yeah, Pat Roach died like 2 days ago. Yeah.
From Frank, because I don't have the money to make it down there.
Mm-hmm.
I contacted Frank because I wanted to get in touch with him about the Run Across America, and Frank was like, "I'll send you a picture, and you can write him a letter, and maybe he'll respond."
Okay, well we get running, okay, Noel?
Okay. All right.
How many different people are interviewed in this book, actually?
33. It was either 32 or 33. I didn't really count well.
Okay, well there's many of the biggest names in the history of wrestling there. Of all the guys when you guys did your radio show, people in wrestling, who do you think had the best mind for wrestling? Based on your talking to them.
Eddie Gilbert.
Yeah, Eddie Gilbert. He was, obviously he had his personal problems and things like that, no question, but he's the type of guy that you would want to sit down and talk wrestling for 2 hours. He had all these great stories. He was a very charming, down-to-earth guy. He loved to talk the business. He was a fan. And just some compelling stories. We're fans, and we loved sitting there and just talking to the guy.
And he was honest about himself, too, never really being a big player and wanting to be and wondering why he couldn't be, because he knew the business so well. I thought he was the best interviewer of them all.
Okay. What, as far as your level of fandom right now, where would you say is compared to, since the time you've been a fan?
Well, it's a cyclical business. Obviously, they need to create some new stars. Quite frankly, I think Randy Orton will win the most improved wrestler of 2004 if he doesn't. I think the voting's fixed. He's at that point where I look forward to watching his matches like I did with Michaels in '95. And I think if they do a correct they can use him as a top guy. I still think there's something salvageable with Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan doing a swerve on Vince McMahon. I was talking to Bruce Mitchell about this about a month and a half ago. I said, wouldn't it be cool if you put on Monday Night Raw and saw Vince in the ring with Donald Trump, where Donald Trump said he was going to start up a business and go head-to-head with Vince. Obviously Vince would be the real owner and Trump would be a figurehead guy. But there's still ideas out there that you can utilize. Bischoff, Hogan, and Sting doing a real invasion on McMahon. I think there's...
Oh, my God, not another invasion.
But done correctly.
Please.
With the McMahons.
Please, you don't understand. Anyway, we're totally out of time, Ed and Vinny. I just want to let you know. And thank you guys very much for joining us, and we'll be back in 1 week with the Hall of Fame show. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.